It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Welcome in, friends. Hey friends, it's Mars, otherwise known as heyBrownBerry, out here on the interwebs. Welcome to the heyBrownBerry podcast. It's very lovely to have you back here, and I know that it's been a while for me. It feels like a long time because I'm the one who is conscious of a recording schedule. It's possible that you are coming for the first time, and if so, you are very welcome here to my channel. I hope you'll enjoy this corner of the fiber and making community. It's Saturday morning and it is summer here in the United States. Where I live in the Southeast, it's hot. Hot, hot, hot. No other way to describe it. We're used to it here. This is summer for us in Florida. The temperatures are reaching above 90 degrees Fahrenheit most days, and actually it has also been really wet. We have a hurricane season that lasts between June and November every year. And some years it's more active than others. And this year I don't know if it's going to be an active storm season, but we don't normally get multiple days of hours worth of rain. And that's what we've had the last 2 weeks. The garden loves it. Most of our yard and garden are planted up with native plants who are very accustomed to the extremes here. And I have also put some things in the ground that seem to be doing well, especially my marigolds. I'm really proud of the marigolds this year. I feel like some of the things I had hoped would come up in my garden adventures were not given the proper timing and care. That's on me. That's not on the seeds necessarily. I'm still learning about what things I can add in the yard that don't grow here already. And the marigolds are my dye plant that's kind of the most prolific this year. So I will be drying those and using them to dye some beautiful yellows and greens at some point. I'm just here to catch up with you. I think that when I spend a lot of time planning a podcast, it tends to delay recording a podcast. So I hope you don't mind a short catch up. On the subject of dyeing, I wanted to just bring up a topic. I'm curious if any others out there do this sort of thing. I used to dye yarn with my oldest child. We had a yarn dyeing business for a couple of years, and we sold our hand-dyed yarns on Etsy under the shop name Dynamics Yarns. It was a great adventure. Adachi and I would come up with colorways, and we would spend afternoons and evenings together dyeing yarn, and my youngest daughter Mizi would help us too with color choices and combinations. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. It kind of started as part of a homeschool fiber arts class and expanded into a little home business, which was fun and an excuse to spend time doing something that I love with them. And yeah, we did that for a couple of years. Adachi even sold some of our yarn at an in-person craft fair. Remember when those were a thing? And she did very well, and it was a great experience for her. And since that time, the adding color to fiber bug has never really left me. I'm almost always thinking about when I can get into the dye pots again. It's a very physically intense process, and for the most part, a lot of it is crossing your fingers and hoping that the idea in your head comes out onto the fiber the way you intended. And I know that there are folks who are very precise. Let me back up and say that not all dyeing is ad hoc and impromptu. I know that there are very good dyers out there who are very intentional about the way that they dye. I haven't studied dyeing to the point where I go in and can create an exact color, or even create a color type between variegated and tonal and speckled yarns. So for me and for us, it was kind of an ad hoc creative play process. So now with natural dyeing, I can be somewhat more intentional in the sense that some natural dyes and some fibers and materials do take some pre-planning and some forethought. But with my garden plants for dyeing, sorry, it may not be obvious to you, but both kids were leaving for work just now and we have to have our goodbye hugs. So where was I? Dyeing. Natural dyeing. Natural dyeing does involve some more forethought and planning. It's helpful to do things like mordanting your yarn or your fabric or whatever material you're going to put color on. And it's helpful to work in ratios with dye plant amounts. So with my marigolds in the garden, I think I have a good enough yield that I'll be able to do a significant amount of yarn dyeing. So back to the question I had about whether or not you do this too, is instead of treating this like I would have when it was a business where I might go to a wool supplier and buy skeins of undyed yarn, you know, in packs of 10 or something like that, and just get a single type of fiber that I'm interested in dyeing, or maybe multiple types but in bulk, I have actually decided that because I am really thinking about dyeing from a perspective of play, I've decided that I'm instead going to rehome some fiber from other makers out there. And I've been using Ravelry as a way to look for folks who are destashing undyed yarn, primarily looking for like a standard cream color or even a light gray or other natural colors. Obviously, it's fine to over dye yarns if they've already been dyed, but I'm looking for folks who no longer want their undyed yarn. So I went onto Ravelry, and there are groups on Ravelry specific to destashing, but what I actually did instead is I went on and did a search for within the stash function on Ravelry, you can search other people's stashes. And there are folks who have listed yarns in their stash under the category will trade or sell. And in many cases, they've taken a photo of the yarn, and even in the notes, they might include some information about the selling price and whether or not they include shipping. So by using the search feature, I can go into other people's stash and see who wants to offload some undyed yarn. So I had a little fun doing that this week. And I just sent out messages to those folks who had those yarns listed saying, I'm interested in rehoming your yarn. And I expect that within a couple weeks or so, once people check their Rav mail, I hope to get some messages back from folks who are willing to send their yarn to me so then I can play in the dye pot. And if I record any of that, of course, I'll share it here with you. One of the things I've been most occupied with recently is a design project. I am working with Lady Dye Yarns on a project called Candid and Colorful. Myself and I think 10 or 11 other designers are putting together a collection of beautiful pieces using Diane Ivy's yarn. Diane of Lady Dye Yarns is putting together this collection specific to BIPOC designers, Black and Indigenous or people of color, who work in knit and crochet design. And it's been a lot of fun to challenge myself in this way. We've been working to a deadline so that we can have a release of this collection in the fall. And if you check the Lady Di Yarns website listed here, you can see information on pre-ordering that collection if you're interested. And Diane has obviously sent us all yarn support, fun yarns to play with. I'm working with this. This is one of the colors. I'm not going to give away too much because you'll be happy for the surprises to come. But this is Diane's Merino DK, and this Merino DK is very soft, very squishy yarn in her collection. And so this is one of the colors, and I'm working towards that deadline by knitting up my sample and finishing up pattern writing. You may have seen me put on my skein necklace here because I just wanted to quickly show something that I posted about on Instagram, and there was some interest in the comments around the fact that I knit with the skein around my neck sometimes. Now, of course, most of the time and up to recently, I would knit from a cake, like a hand-wound cake like this one. So this is pretty standard, but I saw new of Hide and Hammer, a brilliant UK-based leather worker and accessory maker. I saw her knitting in an Instagram post with her skein around her neck. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try that. That happens to me all the time. I see something on the internet. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that. So I started doing this with my last couple of knitting projects. So I have my work in progress here. Can't show you too much, but I have my work in progress, and I put the skein around my neck, and I tend to take the yarn around my neck. Normally I'll put my hair up because my woolly locks can be a bit sticky. But I will put the skein around my neck, and I'll take a couple of strands off of the skein at a time and then knit from this. This is my working yarn. What I love about this is when I am working from a ball, I notice now with the comparison that I'll tug from the ball a couple of times during, a longer row on a shawl or a garment project. But when I unwind from the skein around my neck, I have a pretty long length of that yarn to work with at a given time. I could even do a row and a little bit before I have to tug or loose more yarn. I love it. These simple things that bring me much happiness. Have you ever tried this? The thing I notice is that when I go to put the skein down, I can take it from around my neck and just simply rewind it back into a skein format, especially when it's larger and I haven't used much of it. And that keeps things from tangling and going cuckoo. But if I am in the process of working with it and I am moving around, I'm picking it up, I'm putting it down, I'm sort of going about my day and picking up my knitting when I can. I just tried this the other day. I take one of these claw clips and I put it around one side of the skein, making sure that I catch all of the strands, making sure I catch all the strands in there. And then that means that even when this is laying down, I put it away, I might hang it over a chair or something. It's not likely that strands are going to get tangled up in each other, because that did happen to me a couple times. Full disclosure, I put the skein down without twisting it, and I picked it back up and made a mess. So that's fun. Just a couple of things that I've tried recently. What shall we talk about, catch up on next? Tour de Fleece. Tour de Fleece just passed. That was a spinning adventure that I think at this point is pretty well global. During the time that the cyclists of the Tour de France are riding, many hand spinners around the world are similarly spinning their wheels and spindles. And in a lot of cases, they're doing that toward a mileage goal, or a yardage goal, I should say. I participated somewhat. My goal during Tour de Fleece was to spin every day. That was the idea, was for that period of time I would try to put my hand on my wheel or my spindle every day. And it turned out that spindle spinning was a lot more realistic. It was portable, and I even was able to take it on a short vacation that we took. I'm currently working with some Wool Fiend fiber. I have shared this on the podcast already, I believe, or it might have been on Instagram. I apologize if I'm confusing that, but this is Wool Fiend Corriedale, and it's part of a set of fiber. I will insert a picture of the full set. So that set of 5 colors is very compelling. I would really love to use them together in a project. And I'm working on this golden green first, and I'm actually spindle spinning it because I did sample it on the wheel successfully. I don't have the sample to hand, but I sampled it successfully on my shock matchless wheel. But when I went back after sampling to then kind of start on the official full skein project, I had a lot of trouble getting the fiber back onto the wheel without it breaking, and I just couldn't get the uptake and the drafting to work right. And since then, I've heard from other spinners that this has happened to them too. This is a thing that happens sometimes. Your sampling process and all your settings for sampling go perfectly fine, and then when you try to get the fiber onto the wheel and begin the real project, it doesn't go fine. And that's what happened to me. So I decided to just change course, reflecting on how I could be stressed about that and continue to kind of push and figure out the wheel situation. I decided to course correct and just switch to the spindle. This is my very classy spindle from Classy Squid Fiber Co. It has a beautiful metal whorl. It's got a beautiful metal whorl on top and a thin wooden shaft with the hook is at the top here. If you haven't visited my channel before, I just, for some reason, feel the need to point out that I'm trying really hard not to put things in front of my face when I'm talking. I really don't want to get in the habit of hiding my face as I'm sharing things in case someone needs to read my lips. Anyway, this is one of my favorite drop spindles. It's a top whorl spindle, as you can see the way I'm using it, where I hook the yarn here on the top, the whorl is on the top, and this spun fiber called a cop is on the shaft underneath the whorl. This Corriedale, it has been a fun spin on the spindle so far. Very gratifying to be able to switch from wheel to spindle without too much fuss. I had an opportunity to start some of this, and what I love about the Classy Squid Very Classy spindle is it comes with 3 of these shafts, and they're removable. You can unscrew this hook at the top and remove the shaft, and there are 3 of them in the set, 3 wooden shafts. So that means you can spin up to 3 shafts worth of fiber. You could do a 2-ply or a 3-ply, and that's what I'm going to try. I'm going to try to do a 2-ply. So I've got half of the fiber spun onto this shaft. I'm spinning the other half of the fiber onto this shaft, and then I'm going to ply them together for a 2-ply. My current plan is to do that with all 5 colors and have a really nice toothy 2-ply set of skeins that I can put together in a project. Perhaps a cowl project, or the top part of a vest, colorwork vest, or throughout a colorwork vest if I mix it with another commercial yarn. That's the current plan. I'm really enjoying it because the Corriedale is quite sticky, and it's one of those fibers that once It wants to live together. It's not the longest staple, but it is long enough that I can get going on my spindle and spin a bit. The last thing I wanted to catch you up on is some sewing that I've done maybe a few weeks ago now. Haven't been at the sewing machine in a little while, but when I was, I got on a bag making kick. If you've been here for a while, that's not a surprise to any of you. I love using project bags, and recently I've come to love making them as well. A couple of things that tend to happen most often at my sewing machine are making bags and also making patchwork. So I'm going to show you some patchwork first that I've done. A little bit of backstory. There is a wonderful place called Resource Depot that's local to me. And Resource Depot is essentially a reseller for, I guess you would call them cast-off materials, in the sense that teachers and folks who are contractors, home builders, designers, and other organizations bring materials to Resource Depot to then be resold to the general public. And they tend to really cater to makers who want to use and upcycle, who want to reuse materials and upcycle materials. So it's a crafter's dream because it's a very inexpensive way to get a lot of different types of material to play with. I'm a huge fan, and I hope you have something like that local to you too. I often find fabric there and use it in my sewing adventures. And one of the things I purchased a couple of years ago was a set of those upholstery sample books. And they have, sometimes 100 fabric samples in a book. And my husband helped me to pry them open. And I was able to take the paper off of the back of some of them that has the description of the material and just cut them into usable fabric pieces. A lot of them are cotton, 100% cotton. A lot of them are cotton and linen blends. And of course, there are some synthetic fabrics as well. But this is an example of some fabrics in one collection that I picked up. Just gorgeous prints. And I have decided that when making project bags, my goal will be to repurpose these upholstery samples whenever I can. A lot of these sample books get thrown in the trash. They're basically going to the landfill. And with just a little bit of work, I can rescue the fabric. And it comes in these prints that I might not find anywhere else. I know that there are many newly made, newly printed fabric sources online, but I'm partial to this way of getting the material and then turning it into something that can then be used instead of discarded. So I've used those for patchwork on my sewing machine. Here's just a small patchwork sample. I tend to combine them with other fabrics from my stash. This blue, pale blue linen was also a fabric rescue from Resource Depot. And then I have some old fabric stash, I'm talking more than 10 years old, that I just cut up into different size squares and then combined it with some upholstery samples. Patchwork is fun. I have cut up old sheets, old clothes, and made many panels like this one. Where I'm combining things a bit haphazardly. I really like to sit down at the sewing machine and just put pieces together. And then as I start to build smaller blocks of combined pieces, at some point I have big enough pieces that can then be stitched together in larger panels. And before you know it, you've got big enough pieces to make a bag. I also was using the upholstery samples to make some drawstring project bags using a tutorial. I'll post the link for that tutorial from SewTac Handmade. It's a simple tote tutorial that I use concepts from, and I actually have a video here on my channel where I made the original tote. But some of the sewing techniques and concepts in that handled tote bag video were very useful for just bag sewing in general. So I got on a bit of a kick making some drawstring bags. And I'm just going to say, disclaimer, I'm not selling these bags anywhere just yet. I do have an Etsy shop, which is linked below, and when I do decide to list them, that's where they'll go. These were sewn for the joy of sewing and making and trying new techniques and using stash fabric. So I'm going to show them to you. I had so much fun making these bags because each one was intended for me to play with combining fabrics, to improve my stitching, top stitching, seaming, and to really get comfortable with the proportions of, you know, cutting this size rectangles and shapes will result in, you know, this specific size bag. Each one of them has boxed corners and a wide-ish bottom. They're fully lined and they're drawstring. Fun! So many different steps in the process that allowed me to play. And what you're seeing is combinations again of this upholstery sample remnants with fabric from my stash that I feel matches well, fabric from my stash for lining the bag, and I have in some of them this leather cording as the drawstring. So a really good time at the sewing machine. I have some labels with some heyBrownBerry labels on there. And I was clearly in a blue-green mood. Just mixing up the fabric for the drawstring channels. Even playing with the joining of squares to get alignment and practicing things like lining up my seams. In something as simple as a project bag, there is a lot of skill building. And I really enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. And I'll show you the last one. I love this combination. I really enjoy how these fabrics live together. I also tried my hand at making a drawstring on this one, which is made from taking a piece of linen and folding it into a narrow tube and top stitching it. And then adding a simple tab to the end. Fun, bright colors, lots of fabric. Rescued from the stash, rescued from the landfill. That's the idea. So that's four of the ones that I've made. I had a lot of fun doing that. More than likely I will turn a panel like this one into some side of a bag, put some interfacing on it. Maybe turn it this way and then attach another piece, maybe something solid so that this patchwork stands out, and turn that into a tote as well. And as I said, I'm not selling these just yet. Eventually I will, because I can only use so many project bags at a time. But I'm a little particular about the fun and joy of sewing happening all on its own without it being necessarily a production for selling for now. That just works better for me. Have you been doing any sewing? Any fun patterns, fabrics, items that you're enjoying? I'd love to hear about it if you want to share below. Thanks for stopping by the channel to hang out with me for a little bit. I appreciate you continuing to come back here and spend some time. I love hearing from you. So if you want to comment on any of the making you've been doing, I read all of the comments and respond whenever I can. So I will say goodbye for now and wish you the best upcoming week. If you're like me and your to-do list seems to be never ending, I'm sending you a special, special hug and hope that there is light around the corner. I will see you again soon. Thanks for being here. Bye. Mwah.